Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, and listeners, here we are again, another podcast and a very interesting subject matter today. And our guest today is Jerry Crump from Green Cube Technologies, and he's Director of Business Development. And the subject matter is lithium batteries. So, Jerry, welcome, sir.
Thanks, Chris. Happy to be here.
And likewise. Now, you can see by the tone of my voice, this lithium batteries is almost at this moment in time now. There's been a few incidents and everybody's aware of lithium batteries because of the growth in e-commerce, and there's been some high profile fires on the ramp, etc. So it's a little bit of a taboo subject, but now you're going to clear that up and make everybody calm and understand what these batteries are all about. So I'm looking forward to that as well. Now, can you just give us a little bit of a background as to what you do with Green Cube Technology? And how did you come to get into the business?
Yeah, so Green Cube's technology got into the ground support equipment market through a customer, and it was really a branch off of our material handling battery. And because they see the opportunity there to bring a great product in to help further electrify ground support equipment, they wanted to bring someone with some experience, and I've got 22 years now in ground support equipment, and about 13 years worth of that has been trying to change fleets into E-GSE from internal combustion.
And how difficult has that been?
Well, it depends on where you're trying to do it at. You know, the biggest stumbling block that we've had in the industry has been finding the proper infrastructure to charge the E-GSE. The airports, a lot of them have old grids.
Yep.
A lot of them have not enough power running to the maintenance facilities even to charge the battery up when you're doing work on them, let alone at the ramp.
Yep.
But we've been seeing the airports become more involved lately, and they're trying to help with that situation and help the operators there do good things.
Yeah, I think it's amazing how, you know, everybody now is talking about sustainability, and not just green sustainability, but also, you know, just for the business itself. And if you look at the both, you know, sides of the coin of sustainability, you've got to take into account, you know, people, profit, and the planet. And unless you've got people who are willing to adapt and you've got enough money to adapt, you know, the poor old planet is going to suffer for a long time. And the fact that so many airports, like you said, you know, they've got, you know, they don't have enough power, grid power, you know, the infrastructure access isn't good enough. I think now everybody's starting to think a little bit differently moving forward. And this pandemic has probably enhanced the speed of the way people are thinking about things differently, as well as risk and you know, climate and the planet we live on. So I think new airports, obviously it's without question, but the existing airports, it's a huge problem for them.
Yeah, it really is. In a previous position I held, we were selling chargers, and even on some new terminal projects, it's amazing how fast they run out of the available energy there. And you know, you get into questions about, well, what can we do to shed power and do the load management, and to even help with that load management, right? It's a real problem, and it's going to take some investment from the airports to help rectify that, or maybe even the energy companies that are providing the electricity out there to you know, go in on helping support these initiatives.
Definitely. Now, before we get stuck into some specific questions regarding aviation. Now, obviously, aviation isn't the core business. So you've got medical, you've got industrial. How much of a, should we say, what sort of focus now is on aviation from within Green Cube Technology?
Quite a bit. We're going to stand it up as its own vertical eventually. We're working really hard to interact with the different OEMs out there, get the word out that Green Cubes is in aviation now, right? It's got a presence in the other markets, getting that presence out there, and speaking with the different airlines, the ground handlers, the different folks that support that market already, and let them know that we're here to offer a great product for them.
Okay, very good. Now, and like I said to you just when we were joining there, I know that you've got a lot of focus on iron phosphate, Li-ion batteries, and that's one of the things that you do. But as far as now getting involved with aviation, can you take me through what Green Cube technology offers the airport GSE market?
Yeah, it is LFP, the lithium iron phosphate battery that we're bringing, and it's the same cells that we're using in a bunch of our other verticals, which really allows us to take all that knowledge that we learn in the different verticals and bring that in so that we're offering the best possible product. And we keep continuing to refine that product, right? There are a lot of different technologies out there, chemistries out there, but as you alluded to, everybody just refers to it as lithium, right?
Yeah.
They don't necessarily talk about it. Is it this chemistry or that chemistry? And when you look at the different chemistries, they all behave differently. And there are pluses and minuses depending on what the application is, on why you would go with a certain chemistry over another.
Yeah.
With us, the reason that we like LFP for GSE is typically GSE has to have ballast for tractive force in a lot of the applications, or so in the past, when it was IC, you would put more steel, or when steel is really expensive, you may find concrete in a box, right?
Yeah.
And then when the first electric equipment came out, you put less steel in because you had this very heavy battery in there.
Yeah.
So now when you're going into lithium, instead of having this big heavy lead acid battery in there, you've got something that weighs a fourth of the weight, that now you may have to put a little more steel back in just to get that tractive force again. So it's a balance that you have to run.
Yeah. And all businesses and all industries, they're always focusing on costs and efficiencies and benefits. But when you see people talking about, from one power source to another, most people wouldn't take into account that you've got to then change the way that particular piece of equipment is being produced as well. So like you said, less steel, more steel, concrete cradle, whatever it is, it's always changing, and one difference leads to differences everywhere else. So it's quite a long-term plan, isn't it? So I think the differential you were saying between like the acid batteries and lifespan, with your batteries, you're getting roughly double the lifespan.
Yeah, we're getting twice the lifespan, and not only that, the maintenance is a lot less too, right? So with a flooded lead acid, you've got to do the equalization charges, you have to do the watering, you have to look at what is the pH of the acid. There's so much that goes into that if you miss it, it harms that battery and lessens the life. You maybe get 4 years out of a battery, and you'll see folks that will change out cells in a lead acid battery. That's fine. They change out the cells. That maybe lets that battery stay in the unit longer, but now you've got a cell that's different than the other cells, right? So there's a lot of things that go into maintaining flooded lead acid that you don't have to necessarily do all of that maintenance on an LFP. It's the closest thing you can get to maintenance free.
It is, and it's so important as well now. And I think, with COVID and everything that's come with it, I mean, every single airport location, there's an abundance of GSE, there's abundance of equipment all over the place not being used. And so, the preventive maintenance and bringing it back online, that's a huge task now.
Yeah, it really is. And, some of the owners of GSE out there realized that, right? And they did take the steps to make sure that the equipment was turned on, not just sitting out parked at a warehouse someplace, and doing the little things to keep it from rotting while it sat. But there is an abundance of equipment that's out there now. You see a lot of equipment coming up in auctions in the used market and things like that.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? Now, you're obviously with your title, business development, your target audience, your target customers, how do they vary now from, the handlers, self-handling airlines, and also airport operators? Are you seeing a particular move from one particular area, or are you seeing a little bit of collaboration between all three at certain airports, where an airport takes more of a vested interest in its own ecosystem, or is it just, those particular sectors, they're all looking to change?
They're all looking to make that change. You've got a lot of commitments by the different groups to go zero emission. A big one that made the press about a year and a half ago was, the Newark, JFK, LaGuardia, them saying, that they're going to go zero emission ramp. And they're out there trying to support those initiatives by helping with those infrastructure hurdles that we've all had. But you've also got ground handlers also making similar commitments, and the airlines as well. Everybody's looking at reducing their carbon footprint, and going electric on the ramp is really a smart move, because the operating cost for IC keeps climbing, and the operating cost for electric GSE is staying steady or going down. Yeah. So it's really a smart operational move if you've got the ability to do it.
Yeah. Can I ask you now, when you're talking to people about it, and obviously most people there, they'll think of Teslas, and now you've got all the different cars that are coming on, and everybody I know anyhow, even the most green of green, the one thing that they're not happy with is the range, and the access to the charging, but it's the range. And if you've got everything on at the same time, and then also what happens in the second life of the battery. Do you get that sort of skepticism? Do you get those sort of, like a little bit of resistance there, because everybody knows eventually it's going to happen, but it's just getting into that change routine and accepting that there's going to be a bit of cost at the beginning, and eventually the more and the more and the more we have, the cost will start to come down.
Yeah, there are certain applications that until lithium became involved, didn't necessarily make sense to me personally. When I first started looking at my first project for San Francisco and LAX back in 2009, when I was with Swissport, there was that question, right? We know we can go and fill up our baggage tractor in about 5 minutes by going to the gas station and pumping some gas in it. But we can't charge that fast. What do? So that's where sizing the capacity of the battery was very important, and understanding the operation and the runtime. But the thing that lithium does is it takes a much higher sustained charge and allows you to recharge that much faster. So the opportunity charging when you're in between flights, when personnel are on breaks or on lunch, in between shifts, you can almost recharge a battery during those periods back to 100%, depending on what the capacity is and your charger infrastructure is, right? Yeah. Whereas lead acid, it would take such a much longer period, and lead acid really doesn't like opportunity charging as much as lithium does. No, definitely not. I'm just thinking back to many, God blimey, more than I dare to remember, years ago. And I was out on the ramp, and you were talking there about brakes. And obviously when people have got a brake, they really like to take advantage of it.
So one of the logistical issues is, where to take the vehicles and where to just park them up. So the problem again with sustainability, like I said at the beginning, you've got people, profit, and planet. The people end, they also need to be aware of, the reasons why and how to, because, it causes so many problems. And I remember being on another handling company, and we had so many forklifts, but there were, like anything else, there were some good ones, some bad ones. And the day shift used to keep the keys for their oppos who'd come in on the late shift, and
that would never happen.
give them the good keys. Do you know what I mean? And it was a pain in the rear to try and keep everything, operating properly. And it was like a legacy of, well, I've been here a long time, so I should get the good one, and I'm going to give it to my friend. But the infrastructure at airports for that to happen, with the charging and where it is, I mean, that's another consideration that has to come in as well. Yeah.
Yeah, and the operators out there are starting to have input as to where the chargers are going. I've worked a few projects recently where, we've told the architects it would make more sense if, right?
Yeah.
Because the thought is, well, if we've got 12 gates, we just spread it evenly amongst the 12 gates.
No.
Well, you spread it evenly amongst the 12 gates, and it takes the guy 15 minutes to walk to the break room. He's not going to want to park it there to opportunity charge while he's on his break.
Yep.
So there is a little bit of human factors that need to go into this. And it's everybody is becoming more versed in what works and what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And by doing that, they are planning smarter, and it's evolving.
Yeah.
Really.
I just, like I say, I remember, lots of, and I've been lucky enough to be involved in a lot of new airport builds, but you'd get things like, the height of some of the curbs and the co-buses and the vehicles, having problems with that. And then you'd, like you say, you'd have where you had to park, and all the boys on the ground and say, why on earth didn't somebody just ask? Or why on earth didn't somebody just say, this is what we're going to do? Is this right? So it seems to be some of that feet on ground detail that even the best of architectural groups and teams still to this day have a few issues and a few problems. So are you sort of going to get involved? Do you see that as an opportunity as well to get involved with the advisories and the planning?
I'm always open to talk to folks. Once I figured out the E-GSE made operational sense, it's kind of been a passion to be able to spread the wealth of knowledge that I've, accumulated over this time.
Yeah.
There are a lot of really, really smart folks out there in our industry, and I have no problem talking to any of them anytime about what I've seen, and vice versa. I love to hear their experience, right? Because
exactly
what they have gone through, and as an operator in trying to put these programs together, and their hurdles, that's invaluable knowledge.
Yeah.
And if you can take that knowledge and then maybe add a couple suggestions or ask a couple of the right questions to help with that next installation, it's great to be able to do that.
It is, isn't it? And it's the right thing, isn't it? Because as long as you're listening, you're learning. And when people don't listen, this, it's such a shame, because after the event, everybody's wise after the event. Now, let's take the sectors. So you've got ground handlers, you've got carriers themselves with their own self-handling, and you've got airports. Are they sort of like easing it and trialing it? Or are they looking at big, conversions, or do they have a tactical and a strategy whereby they're going to say, right, we're going to, every time the old ones come up for renewal, we're going to convert them, or we're going to change the batteries, etc. Are you seeing that there's a clear and defined plan within each of those three groups?
It's a bit of a mixed bag. COVID wasn't friendly to our industry. It really, really hurt the aviation industry, especially the international travel. We've been fortunate in the States that we've been able to travel, inside the US quite a bit, and we're seeing a big rebound right now in travel.
Yeah.
But the industry is still hurting. Pre-COVID, we saw one of the airlines in the U.S. make a large purchase for lithium. And we've seen some of the ground handlers and them start to replace some of their lead acid in certain markets. Overseas, there has been a larger adaptation. And a lot of that is predicated on the operating environment. Lead acid doesn't like heat as much and doesn't like the cold as much, right? So the operating window is a little narrower for lead acid, and lithium makes a little more sense in some of those markets than others.
Yeah, no, I know exactly. Spent a lot of time in the Middle East as well, and know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. But it's but it's good. It's good that they're all starting to focus on it now. So I've got my daughter's boyfriend. He started his own business with electric charging, and he's flying away. He's loving it, and he's so focused on it. Do you know what I mean? Every time I get a car, he goes, "Why you buy a car like that? Why don't you?" So I'm eventually going to have to get an electric vehicle, I think, very soon. Now, away from airports and airport GSE, like we spoke earlier about the forklifts and stuff, your biggest markets, how well has it taken off in the medical and the industrial?
Yeah, we've got batteries all over the place, and again, green cubes wasn't really known in the aviation space yet, and so when I first started talking with green cubes, and my eyes just opened because I didn't believe all the places that they had batteries. Yeah. And we've got over 5,000 batteries in MHE now, and that's a pretty sizable amount of batteries deployed. Yeah. And what we've learned there in the MHE side has now been transitioned into the GSE with some of the knowledge and the feedback from the industry. We've again, it's that continual refinement of that product that gets put out there to the industry.
Well, that's great. And as far as like, if I was in the market now and I said to you, all right, fair enough, Jerry, I appreciate what you're saying. What particular benefits would you tell me that I should be thinking about in regard to your lithium technology, and what does it bring, to the GSE market and to customers like myself? What would be the big sales? What would be the Jerry pitch?
The pitch is not so much a pitch, but facts. The ability to keep your equipment recharged and operating, and not just sitting there on a charger all day long, by having that higher charge factor. The chemistry, the LFP chemistry likes or is more acceptant of a higher discharge rate as well, right? So when you get into some of these pieces of equipment like electric loaders, pushbacks, they have these giant surges of power that they request for certain operations, right? When you're lifting 15,000 pounds up in the air, you're going to pull down a lot of power to make that happen. And lead acid doesn't like that, whereas lithium's a lot more acceptant of those short surge spikes in amp draw. And so that means it's generating less heat, and less heat going through an electrical system means less component wear, which means longevity in those components. Whereas lead acid, it's generating that more heat, your longevity comes down, so your maintenance costs go up. So that again turns into that total cost of ownership, right? So your TCO model with having lithium have twice the lifespan, but when you look at that total lifespan cost and the CapEx cost to procure it, you're now below that twice the lifespan with our product. You're also getting rid of all that lead acid maintenance cost, right? Yeah. And then you're getting rid of all of the energy component damage that's from heat that's going into the system. right? So there are all these pluses to lithium out on the ramp. And when you're using lithium iron phosphate, if you look at the SDS sheet, you don't have to have special firefighting equipment for it, right? So you're using what's already there to support your equipment. You're just taking that heavy metal lead battery out and replacing it with something that is cleaner and better suited for the operation.
So cleaner, obvious advantage, and very popular at the moment. You touched on something there which is very sensitive to everybody, especially now coming out of COVID. So, you know, everybody's talking about potential bounce back better, and in the US, the domestic market is, I mean, it's phenomenal now, isn't it? It's really, really taken off.
I've been on a few cramped airplanes lately, and it's
yeah, but it really
it puts a smile on my face.
Yeah, but it's amazing to see, and also the vaccine rollout in the States is good now.
Yeah. Quite a bit of the population has been very receptive and has the vaccine now, and we've been quite fortunate to, you know, in these last 6 months, just the progress that's been going forward.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic. I've got a brother who lives in Texas, and he keeps me updated on, you know, everything. And he's all over the place. He keeps, you know, he's down in Florida, goes to see his kids at uni, and he said it's really, really good what's going on over there. But as far as the big ticket item that everybody needs now, and everybody's talking about, you know, whether it's bounce back better, bring back better, or build back better, everybody needs cash flow. Everybody needs to look at the costs. They need to look at the return on investment. So initially, are you finding a receptiveness or a resistance with regards to doing it? Because it does make sense, and I think everybody would see that. But when it comes to the you know, the level of costs initially, you know, I think people are still going for short term for the cash flow rather than longer term benefits.
Well, there's some truth to that, right? When we sit down and we start to explain everything that goes into that cost, and then we talk about where we're at on our price point.
Yeah.
You know, lithium has only been getting cheaper. Lead acid keeps getting more expensive.
Yeah.
And lead acid is an old technology, and for it to keep going up in cost, whereas the new technology keeps going down, that delta is, you know, coming together. But, you know, there are some products out there that we offer in certain markets, like our lithium on demand, which allows the customer to basically pay for the usage of the battery, and that helps them as well. And, you know, we've talked to several customers about that, because we do know that, you know, cash flow is keen on everyone's mind. You know, we're trying to keep the employees employed at the airlines and get through this hurdle. And ground support equipment usually isn't the first thought on everybody's mind when it comes to our industry.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? But I think what a lot of people are doing now, because they've seen the benefits of, you know, risk assessment and focus on sustainability and you know, how to pivot and be more agile, they're starting to see that if you put all of those small elements together and you've got a good overall picture, it makes quite a big impact, and especially with regards to efficiencies, productivity, and then overall cost savings.
Yeah, you know, when I put an installation in one time, there was a lot of hesitance from the station management about the longevity of that piece of equipment be able to make it through the day, right?
Yeah.
And after 6 months of it being there, I got a call. Hey, can you send me more?
Yeah.
And I said, why is that? Oh, it's so quiet, and the employees aren't breathing in the fumes all day long. And it went from, why are you sending me this stuff, to when do I get the next batch, right? It was, and I think once people get electric GSE into that operation and figure out what they need to make it work properly, and you get over that culture change of how it's operated, it's great for everybody involved.
It is, isn't it? And what you're saying there as well about, once people experience it and they see the difference, and again, working in some of the hot places that I've lived and worked, thank God some of the local authorities, the airport authorities, they give an insistence that you don't have the old diesel equipment inside in covered areas, and if you do have to go in for exceptional circumstances, it has to be under a very, very controlled set of guidelines. So, I mean, all being equal, it's going to mean that there's going to be a lot more, lithium batteries coming more commonplace everywhere. So it's not going to stop. It's going to increase.
Yeah, and even in baggage rooms, right? So the baggage rooms, if you don't have the proper ventilation, you can't charge all that acid in there. Yep, whereas exactly. you don't have that off gassing with a LFP product, right? Yep. So you don't have to put those extra cost into the build of putting those ventilation systems in those bag rooms any longer. And now you can again charge your equipment where the operation makes sense, right? You don't have to be selective just because of the environment that you're operating in when you use a technology that fits the application better.
Yep, no, exactly. And I'm sure in your toolkit, that when you're doing your pitch, that comparison that people wouldn't readily be aware, they wouldn't even consider. But when you look at all the things that are involved with how it is now and all the things that are involved moving forward, and then it gives a really good overview picture, then there must be that sort of green zone where it's a no-brainer, and people say, "Well, my goodness me, why didn't I do this earlier?"
Yeah, and I think that's the reason we're starting to see everyone taking a really hard look at lithium now, and we're seeing the adoption. With the prices coming down to where it makes sense, right? Yeah. The first time I saw a lithium powered vehicle was 2011, and when I asked the cost of the battery, they didn't really want to tell me that cost.
Imagine, yeah.
It was a little over 3 times the cost of the lead acid equivalent. And I said, oh, yeah, we'll talk about that when the price comes down, when I was in that position, right? Now we're there. It's we've got to that where the cost makes sense and the technology makes sense, both at the same time, and it's going to be great to see this changeover that's coming when the industry gets back fiscally ready to make that move. Yeah,
and I think the considerations will be so different, because I'm sure if it hadn't have been for COVID, there's still an awful lot of people who remember that first experience with do I or don't I with the new technology, and as soon as they hear the price or even near the price, oh my God, why would I even consider it? But now, like you said, it's so realistic, and it's something that makes an awful lot of sense. So now, Jerry, if you had to have a little crystal ball, how do you see things driving, especially now that you've had a snapshot into the aviation industry? Where do you see the biggest drivers?
Well, the North American market is pretty much a green field at this point, right? There's been limited adaptation here, but there are other markets that are already there that we're going to start talking, continually talking to those folks. Whether it is a ground handler or one of these airports that is mandating lithium now, because there are several airports that mandate that lithium is all that's used there, which then drives that the chargers must be able to interface with them, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really a big thing for us, is that integration piece, understanding what the charger is that's going to be charging the battery is key. The lead acid batteries still have, there's still chargers out there that are 30-year-old technology that are charging these lead acid batteries, and they may not be efficient enough or clean enough energy output for what we need, right? So we need to make an assessment every time we talk to the customer, what charger are you using? And then we have to look at, how do we interface with that charger, if we can interface with that charger, right?
Yeah.
And through the BMS on a lithium battery, which the BMS does a lot of things, right? It balances your cells. It tells, when to take, how much energy it needs. It controls all the safeties. Everything that goes into a battery is all controlled by this little battery management system. And that BMS also does some great things too for fleet managers. And that's, it allows the fleet managers to then pull data, right? So in the past with lead acid, yes, there were things you could put on a battery that would allow you to pull some data. But now when you've got, our LFP battery, it's coming with that BMS already on there. So that data is there already, right? Yeah. And as the airlines and the ground handlers and everybody is looking at what's going on out there, that they've now got the access to that data that before they maybe didn't have access to. They maybe didn't understand their operation as well as they thought they did, because they were lacking that data, right?
Yeah.
So that's another thing that we're bringing, is the ability for them to focus on what's going on by, they can go out and retrieve it physically, or we have the ability for them to get it off the cloud. There are different ways that we can get the data to them and work with the customer so that they can refine their operation and truly understand what's going on out there. You may not necessarily need 600 amp hours on a baggage tractor to run through your day, right? You might be able to get away with 420.
Yeah.
But until you have that data, you don't know.
Yeah. And that's, and Jerry, that's the thing with so many of what's happened, so many decisions now over the last 12 to 15 months. People were making promises, making opinions, giving their views, etc. But it's data decision driven making that makes all the difference. And now the volumes of data and artificial intelligence and telematics, everything that can help you run your business more effectively and more cost effectively. I mean, anybody to turn their head from those sorts of benefits, it doesn't make sense. And thank God it's coming so fast to everybody. Now all they need is to be able to interpret the data correctly and use it properly, and explain to the operators and the users the benefits and the whys, the reason why, what helps you. Because so many people tell them what to do, where to do it, when to do it, but not why you should be doing certain things in a certain way. And all of that contributes to the sustainability of their company, which contributes to the stability of their positions, their jobs, etc. And if people now started to reflect on this and not be thinking back to the dark days, for the last 12 to 15 months, where people were thinking, I think the only industry I should be in is on the medical, on the front, because that's the only area that's going to be needed non-stop for how long. So it's a great opportunity now.
I'm glad we had those folks in those industries, over the last 12, 15 months. I mean,
amazing.
Very, very thankful for the folks that perform those services for us, I mean, it really, it is a culture change though. But once that change has happened and they understand it, like you said, electric GSE makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It is the future. it's only getting better. We see improvements every year out of the different manufacturers, and how do they take what we've been doing for 100 years, right, out there supporting aircraft, and how do we take that and now change it as the technology changes, right?
Yeah.
Going from carbureted to fuel injected to lead acid to now lithium, and what does the future bring after lithium?
Yeah.
We don't know yet, but it's going to happen, and it's just going to keep evolving. And right now, lithium is the smartest way to go about doing it.
Yeah, and that's a great word. That's a great word, Jerry, to finish on. Doing things smarter and not harder. And with that data and development, I mean, there's so many benefits now. So I think everybody will start looking at the bigger picture and look at all the small elements or the pixels to see how the picture develops. And I think you've got a great challenge ahead of you, great opportunities and great fun. And the quicker you get it done, the better for everyone, I think. So wish you great luck, Jerry. And you'll have to let us know how you do. And I also thank you for correcting me or putting me straight on the two different Kokomos, because if I'd have been on my own, I might have ended up in the wrong one, thinking I was going to a beach.
Well, there's something to be said about cornfields too, Chris.
Oh yes, yeah. No. I come from a farming background in Ireland myself, so you can't beat a good old field.
There you go.
Jerry, take care, my friend. Wishing you great success. Thank you so much for coming on the show, and really appreciate the detail and also the commitment and engagement that you've shown today. So thanks very much. And also, before I go, never ever forgetting, and that's one thing that we must always never forget, is all the people that stepped up and did so well when they were needed, and that's all frontline workers and logistics, and it's brought the aviation sector into a much different volume of people's minds, because they've realized about the supply chain. But for all the the nursing and the doctors and everybody, incredible. And the scientists now with the vaccinations, my God, what an incredible planet and an incredible people we are.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. And I look forward to talking to you again sometime.
Indeed, sir. Thanks very much, Jerry.